What is the current cost to maintain all of your vehicles?
It's really not that bad. I am currently doing engine out work on all the V12 Lambos, and that is bad. That will probably be all in for all three cars, two Mercies and a Diablo. I, retail at a dealership would probably be $250 for what I'm getting done, which is really everything. And these are high mile worn out examples of each of these cars. I'll probably with, finding some cross-reference parts, independent service, lower hourly rates, stuff like that, some promotional consideration, be in it, I don't know exactly, 60, something like that.
Wow.
But you have to imagine that I have zero cost basis in my LP640 coupe, and it is worth almost $1 million. And so it's not wrong for me to spend that kind of money to make them much more reliable cars, and so that I make it the next place I try to take it. But at the same time, this thing, if let's just say worst case scenario is $100,000 a year, if you did everything by the book for maintenance, well, I think the car will go up in value at least $1 million over the next 5 years. And I won't have to spend nearly that much maintaining it. And so I don't have any real fear of financial exposure there. There really is no world in which they go down. Certainly many, many cars are going down in value right now, and we notice that. But it's the newer stuff, the Aventadors, Huracans, McLarens, high-end Porsches, stuff like that.
So how did you accidentally buy a Lamborghini?
Oh, on Cars and Bids?
Yeah.
Well, so I knew the seller. I knew what his reserve was. I knew what he really wanted for the car, and I was not bidding that high. And I expected that I would get outbid because I knew other people were interested. The problem is when you offer a car very publicly for sale like that, people who are hoping it will go up in value prefer not to buy them that publicly. And so they can do really well or they can do really poorly. And this was still the most expensive car to ever sell on Cars and Bids. And so I had bid 710. I knew he wanted 750. I'm like, he's not going to take that. And then nobody bid for the last couple days. And I text down, I'm like, oh no. Oh man, that was and
Can you retract a bid or no?
No, you can't. And I wanted the car for that because I knew that I would still make money off of it. And I did. I didn't make much because everybody knew what I'd paid. But I was like, I didn't have the money. And so I had to call the bank and get a loan real quick. And it worked out. And it was a really, really nice car. I just already had two of them and I didn't need a third one.
What's the interest rate on a loan like that?
And they used to be great. I mean, you'd pay 3-4%, but now everything's higher. So it's in the 8 zone, give or take.
Have you ever lost money on a car?
No. Not since the rental days.
How do you do that?
Because I like to look like I won the lottery more than 10 years ago. And I buy the worst one I can find. And people grossly undervalue the worst cars because they're really not that far away from being okay. And once you do that and you make them all right, and then you prove that you can put thousands and thousands of miles on it, they are actually more valuable. And I can then represent them better and generally make money and trade up until I get something else.
I think the only car I've lost money on, like outside of the daily driver of like the Tesla Model 3, the Tesla Roadster.
Oh,
Unfortunately, good and bad. So I bought that car originally from a $5,000 investment I made. And this is just like, I bought like little $5,000 blocks of Tesla stock back in 2019 when it was trading dirt cheap, when people were fearing that they're going to go bankrupt. And this is one of those $5,000 blocks that I sold for $130,000. And I sold at all of my Tesla stock at peak at $314 to $320 a share. So my cost basis was low, but I figured I still believe in Tesla. I still want to do something Tesla related. So I'm going to take that 130 and put it in a Roadster. So I could trade that instead of the stock, the Roadster. And I figured for the next 5 years, I think the Roadster is going to do better than the stock. And for the first year, the stock plummeted. It went from $300 and something to like $100 a share. And I looked like a genius because the Roadsters were all trading really well. Now they seem to all sell under $100,000. So far, that's the first car that I think on paper I've lost money on.
Well, I think your GT will offset it unless you go drive it as much as I would encourage you to.
Right. But the Roadster is one of 26 ever made in yellow. And I'm told that only about 16 still exist that are not salvaged.
Interesting. That's
So
some Corvette owner math right there. I like it.
yeah.
I mean, and I think those cars have the potential to go up again. I think there's the right level of enthusiasm. Obviously, we're now 4 years overdue on the next Roadster concept, but maybe one day. You know, the electric car thing has gotten interesting. I actually leased my first car, and acquired my first new car, and I bought an electric car, which are three things I probably thought I would never, ever do in my whole life. In January or February of this year, there was a weird mistake that Audi Financial Services and Audi Corporate made where they didn't talk back and forth enough. And they put all these incentives on to emulate the tax rebates that are only available to American-made electric cars now. And so they had discounted these brand new RS e-tron GTs, these like $160,000 electric cars that no one was buying. And they didn't tell Audi Financial Services, and so Audi didn't adjust the lease residuals. So the 1-year lease residual on this car was more than the purchase price. And a friend of mine actually discovered this, that I worked with him at Lamborghini Atlanta. He now runs Audi of Birmingham. And he called me. He's like, Ed, I had to call you because I made an Ed Bolian deal on these RS e-trons. And I'm like, I don't think it's possible to make an Ed Bolian deal on an electric car, Nick. And he's like, oh, no, it's like, he explained it. I was like, okay, that's pretty darn awesome. I said, do I need to come get one? He's like, do you want one? I said, no. He said, well, probably. And so I went over and I got two of them. I got one for my wife and one for my editor. And it's effectively like $250 a month. And it's ridiculous.
I saw your video on this, and immediately after your video, I looked and I tried to find one.
Because there were only like 139 of them in U.S. inventory on February 1, and they'd all sold within like a week of my video.
Yes.
And it was real. And the more interesting thing, and really the only reason I actually wanted to do it, because I wanted to watch them squirm at the end, because it's a high 7, low 8-figure loss that Audi Financial Services will have to take at the end of this, and they will not want to do it in a single month. And so what I believe they will do is offer really, really attractive used car leases on these cars as they come back in. And so I think I'll be able to turn it in and then lease it back for even less money for the next year.
Now, all of this reminds me that the future of business is really uncertain, because if you ask 9 different experts, you're going to get 10 different answers. From a bull market to bear market, stocks go up, they go down. It's really confusing, and it would be very helpful to have a crystal ball.
But until that happens, over 40,000 businesses have already future-proofed their business with NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 cloud ERP bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR into one fluid platform. Plus, with just one unified business management suite, there is just one source of truth giving you all of the visibility and control you need to make quick decisions. And with real-time insights and forecasting, you're peering into the future with actionable data.
When you're able to close the books in days and not weeks, you're spending less time looking backwards and more time looking for what's next. So whether you're earning millions or even hundreds of millions, NetSuite helps you respond to immediate challenges and seize your biggest opportunities. And speaking of opportunity, right now you could download the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning at netsuite.com/iced. Again, netsuite.com/iced with the link down below in the description. netsuite.com/iced. Thank you so much, NetSuite, for sponsoring this episode. And now back to the podcast.